Hello,
Hello.
welcome. My name is Georgia Court, and I'm the proprietor at Bookstore Number One in Sarasota. And I'm so thrilled to see so many of you with us this evening. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with Gina. But before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to ask you to please stay muted during Gina's presentation. When she's finished, we are going to have a Q&A and an open discussion with her. And at that time, we'll ask you to go ahead and unmute. But in the meantime, it would be nice if we weren't hearing background noises like dogs barking and toilets flushing and doorbells ringing. So let's be on mute, and then that won't happen. Also, in the chat, if you look at the chat function at the very top of the chat, there's a link there. And if you click that link, that takes you to a place at Bookstore Number One where you can purchase Gina's new book. And I hope you will do that. If not during this event, very, very short. There, thank you. And Gina's holding it up so you know what it looks like. Okay, we are ready to get started. Hailed as smart and funny by People magazine, Gina Barreca was deemed a feminist humor maven by Ms. Magazine. She has written for most major publications, including the New York Times, the Chronicle of Higher Education, Cosmopolitan, and the Harvard Business Review. Quite a mixture there, I'd say. She is a Board of Trustees Distinguished Professor at the University of Connecticut, as well as winner of its highest award for excellence in teaching. Gina has written 10 books, including the best-selling They Used to Call Me Snow White, But I Drifted. The only full-time female academic to be a member of the Friars Club, Gina is also an honoree of the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. She's been awarded 4 honorary degrees and is a sought-after speaker for both academic and non-academic groups. Please welcome Gina Barreca.
Georgia, thank you so much. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And I'm so happy to see new faces and also to see so many people that I know. This is really, I said, come out and play tonight. And that's what I think that we're here to do. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out to enjoy yourself. Like I said, I'll give you your money back if you're not entertained. It's very convenient that it's a free event. So I'm not going to have to work too hard to make that happen, but it's really a treat. And Georgia Court is, of course, a wonderful person to deal with, and the consummate bookstore person, the bookstore owner that you want to deal with. There are a few of them in the world that make bookstores into the places we've always wanted them to be, that we feel like we're going home, but it's the home that we really want, as opposed to the home many of us have actually come from, where it's the home where you feel like they have something interesting to talk about, they're happy to see you, and just for some cash, they'll give you something to take with you that'll make you think, that you can pass on to somebody else, that will make you happy, and it'll give you ideas to take away. It's really, out of all the things you can take away from someplace, ideas are the best thing that you could possibly take away. And it's really exciting to be here and talk about the new collection, which is, I am going to hold it up again, Fast Funny Women, because I've had really great luck with a lot of my book covers, but this one was drawn by Mimi Pond. And Mimi Pond, some of you will recognize her work from The New Yorker. She's a cartoonist from The New Yorker. And there are a couple of cartoonists from The New Yorker. Liza Donnelly, who's in there all the time. Liza Donnelly wrote one of the pieces. Mimi wrote a hilarious, both Liza and Mimi wrote hilarious pieces about growing up. Mimi Pond writes about fabric. She was a designer as well as an artist, and talks about how nobody, under 40 knows what a peplum is, or knows how to identify different kinds of lace, that that she just, it's a way of defining her world. Liza Donnelly writes about 6 points in marriage, how in relationships you have to figure out in every relationship how many points you get for doing something, like how many points you get for making the coffee first, refilling the cup. Does it count? Like, what if you end up like folding his t-shirts? It's a new relationship. You fold his t-shirt, which never would have occurred to me, but you fold his t-shirts. But what if he doesn't like his t-shirts folded? What if you do her laundry, but she really likes to do her own laundry? How you figure out those things. And when you talk about points, does it mean you get points for getting out of sex? Or you get points for the kind of sex you like, or you get, I mean, it's just people telling the truth about their lives in 750 words turns out to be an interesting thing. And in fact, the book has done so well in its initial printing that where we've got into a second printing with Woodhull Press, which is a lovely independent press based in Connecticut, and that I am just delighted to work with. I've published with sort of every place in New York that you can find. And they're now all, you might have heard, we could do publishing gossip if you want. They're all becoming one big place that sort of in New York, and that is finally going to just be owned by, I don't know, whoever controls the universe. If it's, I don't know if it's Mitsubishi now or Sony, it's going to be some other thing, but it's going to be one thing. It's going to be John Deere. It's going to have nothing to do with books. People who are running books out of New York know nothing to do with books, but Woodhull Press, they love books. They're doing books. So not only are we doing this, we're doing, and I'm happy to talk about this during the question and answers, another collection of books called Fast, Fierce Women that's going to come out next year, and where Georgia has honored me by agreeing to be in it. So has, if you're NPR fans, Maureen Corrigan is going to be in it. New York Times bestselling author Carolyn Levitt is going to be in it. So the essays are already coming in for that book, but I have about 10 places left. So if you're interested in submitting something, I can still read it if you contact me. And my website, I have a really wonderfully witty name for my website, which is ginabarreca.com. I am really easy to find. It's very simple. It's ginabarreca.com. And at this point, I think however many R's or C's you put in after Gina, it doesn't matter. You're still going to find me. It's not like there were that many Gina Barrecas in the world. So Barrecre. I always thought if I had a daughter, I would name her Rebecca Barbara Barreca, just so that when people said, can you spell that? It would be REBECCA and people would just hang up. I mean, it would just have made her life interesting, and probably that's why I don't have kids. And although I do have two lovely stepsons who are at the absolutely adorable age where they're both attorneys. And they're so cute at this age. I just can't tell you. They're just adorable. They're you just want to pinch their cheeks. Anyhow, so my work, and again, so please, I'm not going to take questions as I'm going to do my first little bit. I'm going to go into like Professor Barreca mode. I'll talk for half an hour, and then we'll have the conversation. And so I want you to write down the real questions that you have, please. But think of them, because if you're like me, if you don't write them down now, you're going to forget about them by the time we actually open the question. So please take things down. I have been working my whole life, since I've had an academic and writer life, on women's humor. Now, I should start by saying, because it seems like a friendly crowd, what I tell everybody to start out, just so you don't have to waste any time on guessing, I am 64 years old and I weigh 147 pounds. Okay. So, because otherwise women look at other women and we try to guess things about them like we're at a state fair and we're going to win a ham. Okay, so I'm really, so that's what I am. I look better on Zoom than I look in person, which is fine. I don't even know how to do. Somebody said, "Are you using that gauze thing?" Or so I don't even know how to do that. I just look better in makeup. It's fine, and it's waist up. That's fabulous. So, 64 years old, 147 pounds. Somebody asked me when I went to give a talk not that long ago, because it's all about the honesty, and I want to tell people, so we'll speak frankly because that's where the humor is. And she came up, and it's not enough that I give her my age or my weight. And she said, "No, really." She said, "What size are you?" And I said, "Okay, what size am I?" I said, "You want me to be on?" This is in front of 250 people, right? It's like the American Heart Foundation or something. And their Red Heart Day, their Red Dress Day. And so it's in a big convention center. It's nice. And I said, "Okay." I said, "I'll be honest. What size am I?" I said, "In an Armani, I'm a 10. And at Dot's Dress Barn, I'm a 22W." Okay. Because women know that the more we spend for our clothing, the smaller the size we will be. And if I wasn't an academic, if I had real dough, I could be like at an 8. Okay. I could buy like a St. John suit, one of those knit suits that they can steam onto your body, right? They would just get a steamer and they just will make it fit, even if it's 4 sizes. Like they could just put it like, it's like paper mache. They'll just form it to your body. And it's not a good look on me. I had to wear a sort of ivory colored one to a friend's 4th wedding because that's what the people standing up for her had to do. We had to wear ivory clothes. And so I was steamed into a St. John's ivory colored suit. And I didn't look bad from the front, look good. But I saw pictures of myself from the side that the photographer took. I looked like I was in the larval stage of something. I mean, it was like, what will she emerge as when she comes out of her cocoon? It was not. So women have different ways of going through life than men. I don't think this is going to be a shock to either the men or the women in the audience. And that one of the ways it turns out that our differences appear is in terms of our humor. Now, I grew up in a big Italian family in Brooklyn, New York. I have lived in Connecticut for 34 years, for more than half my life. I lived in England for 5 years. I went to Cambridge University. And I am not one of those people who go to England for 2 weeks and then come back going, "Oh, yes, the accent. I just pick up an accent wherever I go." Do you know one of those people they're in London for 2 weeks and they come back and they're saying, "Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We're in a lovely flat. It had a lift. We were on the 3rd floor and there was a marmalade cat next door. It was charming. And we had biscuits every day." And it's like, yeah, I lived in England for 5 years. I still talk like this. It didn't rub off on me, that whole other talking like an English person thing. I still sound like I'm from Brooklyn. And one of my next door neighbor from Brooklyn, the woman I grew up next to, the girl I grew up next to, who's older than I am, but looks a lot better than I do. And she was like the first girl on the block to go to college. And you know her as Judge Judy. So Judge Judy is in the book. Judy Scheinlin, a Florida, now a Florida, she divides her time between many places, but one of them is she lives in Naples part of the year. And I go down to see her, and it's a riot. And when Judy and I get together, after 5 minutes, her accent also, the two of us sound like we're really talking, we're fishwives yelling over the back fence going, "Your cousin did not do that. Your cousin she was all over the place. You don't know what your cousin was really like." And our husbands are going, can you keep it down a little bit? Because other people, you're embarrassing the other tables. And we're like yelling at each other. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and the men and the women had rather separate lives in my day. first of all, I grew up in one of those big 3-story, 3-family houses that you might remember. They're on the outskirts of every city, right? And in my day, you had like, great grandma in the attic. And she was only brought down like on a feast day, otherwise she'd be at the casino, I realized. But then there was grandma who had the main floor and the main kitchen. And then in an Italian house, there was always a downstairs basement. Did any of you grow up in one of those? So there were the aunts in the downstairs kitchen, and the aunts would be laughing all the time. But the aunts would not laugh the same way they would laugh around the uncles. The aunts would laugh in a very loud, unfeminine way. And yet when they were around the uncles, they would go, and that is not how they laughed when they were on their own. They had very different kinds of laughs. When women laugh by ourselves, we don't go, we go, and we start to go like this, and we're going, no, don't do that, and we're going, and we finally go, don't make me pee in my pants. And this is why men are nervous around women laughing, is they think we leak, right? I mean, if a guy is having a conversation with a woman in his car, he's trying to have a very, very serious conversation. The last thing he wants her to do is leak in his car. And so I decided I was going to spend my time looking at how women's humor really worked. Now, men think women don't have senses of humor. I think probably almost every woman here has heard, what's the matter, honey? Can't you take a joke? Oh, come on. I'm just kidding around. What's the big deal? Why are you so sensitive? And why do we hear this? It's not because we don't have a sense of humor, but because our sense of humor is different. Okay. For every woman who's been told you're too much, anybody here ever been told she's too much? Oh, you're too much. You're too much. You're too loud. You're too smart. You're too mouthy. You're too whatever. It's not that you're too much. It's that the world isn't enough. It's like fitting into those like St. John suits. We have to make sure the world fits us, not that we fit into the idea of the world. And that's what women's humor really does. And that's what I discovered. So women were told we had no sense of humor because, for example, we tended not to like the Three Stooges, right? You don't see women going up to each other at a meeting, at an event, at a conference, at a book evening, going up, going, nyeh, nyeh, nyeh. We're not poking each other in the eye. Women are not making fart sounds from under. We don't spend our adolescence learning how to do this, right? We don't smack each other in the forehead. We don't do this. And that's when we get the idea that we don't have a sense of humor because we don't think that's funny. This is not what we do. And then we're told, if you don't find this funny, you don't have a sense of humor. And I'm going, that's not it. The other thing women tend not to do, and I'm happy to hear disagreements about this, women tend not to tell jokes. When a woman says, I got something funny to tell you, you better sit down. You're going to be there a long time. Because when a woman says, I got something funny to tell you, she's going to tell you something that happened to her that day. She's not going to tell you a joke. And one reason she's not going to tell you a joke is because women don't remember jokes. We don't remember jokes. We remember the name of our best friend's dog from 7th grade. But we will not remember the punchline to a joke we heard last night, and we will ruin it for the men that we know, right? How many times you heard a woman go up to a guy that she works with, her neighbor, her friend, and she goes, Henry, tell that one about the shrimp. And Henry goes, I can't tell the one about the shrimp because shrimp is the punchline. You ruined the joke. I'm never going to be able to tell that joke again. This is not how this works. Women tell stories about what happens in our lives. So that's what this book is about. I asked 75 of the smartest, funniest women I know, some of whom are Pulitzer Prize winners. Jane Smiley, Pulitzer Prize winner for 1,000 Acres. Not that many women in America won the Pulitzer Prize. Jane Smiley wrote just for this book. It's not an anthology. People wrote just for this book. Jane Smiley wrote for this book. Marge Piercy, one of the great poets in American poetry, wrote for this book. I start the introduction by saying a Pulitzer Prize winning novelist, a TV megastar, 2 members of the American Academy of Poets, 4 accomplished stand-up comics, a director of the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics at the University of Pittsburgh, the director of the National Campaign School for Women at Yale, 3 award-winning screenwriters, 2 New Yorker cartoonists, and a commander of the British Empire all walk into a book, because those are the first people that I asked. And then there are writers that you've never read before, because they're 19 or because they're 80, but they've never sent their work out before. So there are writers that you know, although you've never seen them this way, and that there are writers that you've never heard from because they finally got the courage to submit an essay. They found their voices. They decided there was this funny woman inside of them. They decided this was a story they had to tell, and they all gathered in one place. And the same thing is going to, with any luck, going to happen with the Fast, Fierce Women collection, where people are telling their stories. I think most of them will have a humorous part of it, because I think most things in life, you have 2 options, which is to either, hide, lock in the closet, suck on a eucalyptus tea bag and be miserable for the rest of your life, or to turn the horrible thing that happened to you into a story. And if you turn the horrible thing that happened to you into a story, my bet is that there's bound to be some humor in it. And that what humor allows in our lives, and why it's so crucial, is that it lets us redeem moments that are otherwise lost to tragedy. Humor is redemptive. And I don't have a spiritual life apart from asking people I know who have faith to say a prayer for me, wish me luck. I feel like people who go to shul or go to temple, who go to the mosque, who go, out into the woods, if they're druids, wherever they go, I feel like those people have like a special tracking number with like religious UPS, and I ask them, say a prayer. For me, if I need it, but I don't feel like I have that connection. But I really do. If I believe if there's redemption in anything, it's that telling the story lets you get your deposit back on something that happened to you in life, so that you get to tell your story. And that's what I say. It's what I say in the 10 books that I've written and the 18 that I've edited. But what I say in Fast, Funny Women is that, the funny parts of our lives don't get discussed enough. And that humor works by approaching topics nobody else wants to touch. It embraces taboo subjects. What's taboo for women is different from what's taboo for men. And therefore, women's humor is going to be different from the humor that men use. And that there's no such thing as an ordinary life. The best comedy doesn't trivialize the moments of our lives, but instead emphasizes, italicizes, and puts into bold the individual moments from which all significant stories are made. So I say, writing it down is the opposite of covering it up. And that's why writing it down is important. Right? Writing it down is the opposite of covering it up. And that's why telling the story, and telling the story as truly as you can. This is creative nonfiction. There's a lot of room in that creative. It's you make the story. If you're the one who's telling the story, you get to tell the story. And the last line that I have is sort of the invitation to the readers and to those who want to write. All good writing reflects and illuminates life. Fast, Funny Women holds a mirror up to life, but 750 words, so it's a compact mirror. And with luck, you'll see yourself, and with luck, and I know it's not going to take a lot of luck, you'll laugh, because the stories here, they're so incredibly personal that they're universal. And that's how humor works. It's in the details. And it's in the details that people get your real sort of essence. And then they go, oh my God, something like that happened to me. I have a version of that. Tell me that. And when we laugh together, I think that laughing together is one of the deepest connections you can make between two people. It's really an amazing sense of connection. And especially for this last year, it's been an interesting project to work on for the last year, as you can imagine, because we've all needed to find humor just to survive. It's a survival, tool. And that to be able to laugh together, even in a virtual space, is enormously healing. And it's enormously, um, it's a relief to know that somebody else feels the way you do. And when somebody laughs with you, you know that they're seeing something from a similar perspective. So that's sort of what Fast Funny Women is. If you, what I think I mentioned it to Georgia, but if I didn't, I would be happy. I have book plates um, that I can sign if you'd like a personalized copy, or if you'd like a copy to give to somebody else for a holiday coming up, something as a gift book to say thank you. It's like buying 3 Hallmark cards. Honest to God, it's not that big an investment. And that I'd be happy to sign the copies for you to give to a friend, to a daughter, to a sister, to a neighbor, to somebody that you'd like to. And the nice thing about books, it's much better than pajamas, because you can't like wear a pair of pajamas first and said, I had to wear these to make sure you'd like them. But you can read a book first to say, I had to make sure to read some of it to make sure that you'd like it. That's perfectly legitimate. You can't do it with like lingerie. That has to come in the box with the paper in it. You can't even open the seal. It needs to come in the wrapping. So, all right, are we ready to take questions?
Yeah, anybody out there, I'm going to go to gallery view so I can see all of you. You can, you can unmute yourselves, of course, when you're ready to ask a question. And if anybody will raise a hand out there or just make it known that you would like to participate. But, I want to ask Gina, though, you're talking about laughter, and particularly in this last year. And, as you were speaking, I was on mute. I had my video turned off, and I was here laughing my head off, but you couldn't hear it. And I would imagine that there were other people on this call laughing their heads off too. So how do you feel about that? How do you handle that? I loved it.
Oh, thank you very much. There are times I'm just so happy to see faces, because I'm looking and I think, okay, Linda was laughing. I'm happy to see Linda. Elaine, every once in a while, Elaine would really laugh. Um, Carma Lloyd, I'm not sure how we say Karma Lloyd's with it. That Graham, who's a friend of mine, I would see Nancy will look up and nod and smile. I mean, I'm looking, so this is Cordelia. I wasn't sure I was reaching you. I'm looking, it's like this young woman, not under, what I'm doing, that people have themselves blanked. I have no idea what they're doing while I'm actually talking. God knows. Maybe they're making dinner, they're making a lasagna. Their people are very busy, but I'm very happy to do this because I have done, actually somebody from, I don't know if he is here, someone actually from Sarasota, from the literacy volunteers, wrote to me and asked if I would do something. There are, I talk a lot for corporations, and for them, I get paid something that lets me buy jewelry. And then there are things I do for free, like bookstores, like literacy societies, libraries, right? Women's organizations. So those I show up, when I could show up in person, I show up in person. And then I would, on the Zoom. So I've done several of these on Zoom over the year. And at least here I can see faces. I see Pia, so nice. I've seen, I can see faces, and it's great. But there have been times when I literally just speak. And so for one group, it was like, please make us laugh. I think it was like a group for like the people who had disabilities where they couldn't really move and were in lockdown and were isolated. It was please make our not our clients, I can't remember, our community, make them laugh, make sure that you're funny. But I saw no one. And so I'm talking into the void. I mean, I'm speaking into the green dot at the top my computer. And I'm like, I am now like I'm a Twilight Zone episode. I am a lady that Rod Serling would write, that she's, in this year when no one can speak, here is a woman apparently speaking to other people, trying to make them laugh and having no idea if she could do it. And I don't know whether I'm losing my mind or not. So I'm doing my best, and I'm trying to pause where I'm hoping people laugh, but I have no idea. So it's so nice just to see faces. I'm so happy. You're giving me a lot of, when I'm teaching, I've been teaching online because I still teach, still teaching full time at the University of Connecticut. And I have a creative writing class and a modern British literature class. And so they're all online, and I make them put their faces on. They can have it just from their eyes up if they want, but because they have to be engaged. And I think it's really hard if you're not seeing people's faces. So I'm very grateful for when I see people, looking like that I'm not in the Twilight Zone, that I somehow feel as if we've all been. I don't like to think it's just me.
Yeah, we're all here, Gina.
Thank you.
And I see Karma, who would like to ask us a question and make a comment. Karma, you are on mute.
Go ahead.
I've unmuted. Gina, I'd like to know, I have a personal question. Were your parents the immigrants or your grandparents?
My mother was herself an immigrant, but she was not Italian. She was an immigrant from Quebec, from northern Quebec, up by Chibougamau. And she was very French Canadian. She both my parents left school after 8th grade to go to work. And she taught herself English by, as many people around the world have, by going to American movies. And she was also at 14 worked at hotels in Quebec City, made her way all the way up to the Fontainebleau. And she did the switchboards. Remember when they had the big, you had to actually do the switchboards? She was a switchboard operator, and she used to listen in to the phone calls from America. So I grew up paranoid, basically, because I always understood, long before FBI, CIA, terror, I knew that people were listening in because my mother had taught herself English by listening to that. And my father picked her up on a beach after World War II. I have a picture of her in a bathing suit. She looks quite lovely. And they courted long distance before there were highways. He would drive up to Quebec on the weekends and brought her down to live with his very, very large, very Sicilian, very, I'm afraid, unwelcoming family. But it was my father's family that came from, my father's parents who came from Sicily. And I just went to Sicily. I'd been to Italy many times, but had never been to Sicily. And my husband and I went about 4 years ago. And nobody in my family ever went back to Italy. And they were like, what's there? They left. My grandfather had worked in the sulfur mines.
Oh.
And it was not like it was supposed to be a beautiful place or, whatever. And I went, and it was like paradise. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I realized that the poverty, my grandparents were both illiterate. They signed their names with X's. We have the Ellis Island Manifest. So the world that they came from was unkind and too hard. And that America really did give them a promise that Sicily couldn't. And for my mother, she became a citizen. She wanted to vote for Kennedy. And but she died when I was very young. And so it was really the Italian part of the family that I know better than the other part. And how about you, Karma? Do you come from?
Well, that's very interesting. I am half Sicilian as well.
Uh-huh.
My grandfather worked in the salt mines as well before he came here. So,
Yeah.
So do you know what part of Sicily were they?
And it's right outside Palermo in a small town called Castelbuono.
Yes, I know that. Anyway, I guess my greater question that would be more of interest to everyone was, did you notice a difference in humor between the people off the boat and the next generation with the women?
That's well, I mean, really, I talk about this a lot in Snow White, and then in a book I wrote about being one of the first women at Dartmouth College in the 70s, where being Sicilian, I was the only Sicilian at Dartmouth College apart from Michael Corleone in The Godfather, and he was fictional, there. First of all, I think that the poor are funnier than the rich, is one of the arguments that I've made actually in scholarly articles. Because again, as a survival tool, it's necessary. And what poverty does is to force a lot of people into a small space. And so you have to be funny, again, to learn how to survive there. But what I did see, because really in the sharp differentiation between men's lives and women's lives in the Italian life, that it was the women really laughed just in front of the women. They laughed at the men, but the men didn't know it. It was the secret language of women. So that the aunts would be, the 117 who were there for the, immediate family dinner Sunday after mass. And it was like the men stayed home, the women went to church. It was like God was on your mother's side of the family. The men would be like, say hello for me, right? I'm praying to say mattress. I'm not getting up. The women would go to church. And they would go, like they'd be in the basement kitchen and they go to each other. All right, Rosie, I'm going to tell Tony that I got the brachol at the butcher he doesn't like. I got it the butcher he likes, but I'm going to tell him I got it the butcher he doesn't like. Let's see what he does. It was like men were a chemistry experiment. So they would go out and the man, the guys would be sitting there and they go and they're looking at each other, but all straight faces, right? Big straight face. And again, an Italian man, once he sits down, at the set table on a Sunday, he doesn't get up again, right? So like the table is set, the women come in with the food like Sherpas. And, and the guy sitting there, if, he would go like, girls, I don't have a fork. And there, like the high boy would be behind him. He could go like this, but instead 17 women go, oh my God, he doesn't have a fork. Somebody get your uncle a fork. He works all week. He doesn't have a fork. Who's at the table? Who did this? He doesn't have a fork. So, but on the straight face. So they go and they go, Tony, Rosie said that she didn't get the meat for the brachol. We had to go to the butcher on the corner. It wasn't the same. And Tony, with like the authority of Juan Valdez tasting the coffee, right? Some of you remember that ad. We take a bite and you go, girls, it's very good. Yeah, it's good. It's not the same. Not the same, but it's fine. And the women, once they were, but they would look at each other. And then they would go in the kitchen. They would go, did you see him? We got him. I told you he wouldn't know. He thinks he's such a big shot. We could have put anything in front of him. We could have done anything. And that was like, I thought, oh my. I thought, these women are dissimulating. They are not saying the same thing. But whoever did, I mean, think of the songs we grew up singing. Now I'm going to play right here. Think of the songs we grew up singing. I mean, I grew up singing things like, I will follow him, right? I will follow him wherever he can go. There is no mountain too high, no river too deep, no ocean too wide. I mean, this guy dates this woman once and he needs to be in a witness protection program, right? She's going to follow him wherever he goes. It's terrifying. And she's singing like, will you still love me tomorrow? He's singing, we've got tonight, why don't you stay? It's amazing we get along as well as we do. I mean, we grew up in these very different worlds. All my Barbie wanted to do was get married. His G.I. Joe did not have a little wedding tux, right? The little boys were not going, what color cummerbund is your GI? Well, some boys were, but you know, I had one cousin, one uncle, they were talking about the cummerbund, that colors, but that was it. The other ones were all just blowing things up. And then you get to later, and then again, we're being told that this is, you know, we're the ones who don't have a sense of humor because we don't think that a fart pillow, or we don't think that the fart scene in Blazing Saddles is the funniest scene in any film ever written. And, you know, I mean, you will watch that and you go, I don't think that's funny. Men will go, I'll rewind. Like you missed the subtle nuance, right? Like you didn't get it. Like there's somehow, you know, so I would say that what there is more of now, Carmen, to go back to your question, is that there used to be more of a division between humor. I like to think that humor now can cross, you know, cross those floors more easily, that more people have, even in families, they feel that they can say more things out loud and understand that if somebody doesn't laugh, it's not because they're dumb or that they don't have a sense of humor. But the vulgarity, the loudness, the fishwifeness of those old stories from the old neighborhood, they were great too. And I celebrate the spirit of those aunts who told me about laughing and at the same time told me to shut up. And they always said to me, she has a mouth. You have to be careful of that one because she's got a mouth on her, as if that was somehow something a woman was not. Look, I immediately go like that. Like that's something she's not supposed to have. She's not supposed to have a mouth on her. What are we going to do with her? Who's going to marry her? Who's going to marry her? That was always the big issue. And then I'll tell one more story about that and then I'll take more questions. But so my mother died and I was good in school and my teachers adopted me. Teachers and libraries saved me. And they really did. And they were my adoptive places and bookstores, but there weren't that many. There was one called the Paperback Shack that I remember, which I could go to when I was a kid. And I remember buying the Bell Jar there, but I was like 12 and I had no idea what was going on, but I still read it. And I was like, oh my God, you know. But so I got into Dartmouth and because some teacher told me I should apply, that they had just let girls in. So I'm going to tell one of my Aunt Philomena, who's stirring the pot of sauce, red sauce, that had been on the stove since 1948. Because there was always one pot of sauce that was on the stove 24 hours a day because somebody could get paroled. You know, there had to be hot food. And some of you think I'm kidding. And so I go to Aunt Philomena and I go, hey, Aunt Phil, I'm going to go to college. And she pauses in the stirring, which is like, that has never happened. So the earth changes slightly on its axis. I think that was the actual cause of climate change, was when she stopped stirring. And she goes, you're going to go to college? So where are you going to go to college? And I said, I'm going to go to college in New Hampshire. And I thought she was worth the money. I said, hey, Phil, I got a scholarship, I got work study, I got loans. It'll be fine. Said, you're going to go to college in New Hampshire? And I said, it's okay. I could take the bus. It's fine. Said, you're pregnant, right? And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm good at school. And she said, happened to your cousin Elaine. You can always come home. Because who left at 18? Who left the state? Right? You got knocked up, you left the state. And so I go to Hanover, New Hampshire. It's the last Ivy League school to go co-ed, 1975. 1975, it was a 7-to-1 male-female ratio. The other like 12 women they let in all looked like Grace Kelly. And in 1975, on a good day, I looked like Janis Joplin, right? And so I'm walking around the campus thinking, I got 9 months before anybody expects me home. You know, I might as well have a good time, right? And so that's where I also learned. That's where I learned the word feminism. And that's where I learned, like, oh, wait a minute, I need to get this world to fit me. I'm never going to fit into this. So I have to alter this to fit me. And so that's where I learned a lot about the seditious nature of the humor of the working class, of women, of loud women, of loud, annoying women, we can go on.
Right. Well, Gina, Nancy Brennerman
Yeah,
wants to
Nancy.
know about all of the artwork that's behind you.
Yes, my office, I tried to recreate at home pretty much a version of my office from school. Most of this is stuff I brought back from my office at UConn. And my office at UConn, as any of my former students will attest, is like the inside of a piñata. I mean, that's what it's sort of like what my brain is. So there are needlepoint. That skyline of New York is actually a needlepoint piece. The interior piece is a needlepoint piece. The artwork that you can see the bottom of is an oil painting by a friend. The one below the sort of industrial setting is a print by a friend. Some are book covers. Since my first book was called, they used to call me Snow White, but I drifted. I have a lot of Snow White items and little icons all over. At the bottom, there is a small version of me. There's a little like toy version of me pointing. And that was from, I did a book with Gene Weingarten of the Washington Post called I'm with Stupid. One man, one woman, and 10,000 years of misunderstanding between the sexes cleared right up. And it was published by Simon & Schuster. And we'd written these series of pieces for the Washington Post over 5 years and had never met. We did them over email and over the phone. And we met on Good Morning America, the day the book was published. It was like the longest blind date. But for an illustration, they made these two figures. And I bought mine. And I bought Gene his as a nice gift. And he has told me that he lost his now. So forget it. But mine is right there. You can't do anything nice. You can't do anything nice for anybody.
Who else wants to join in the conversation?
Cordelia does. Hi, Cordelia.
Hi. I'd like to know what books and humor TV you read and watch when you're not on the job and you just want to have fun.
That's a great question. Let's see. I'm looking at my bookcases right in front of me. So a lot of the people who are in the book are people that I read. I really do love Mimi Pond. I have her first book in front of me, which is called Shoes Never Lie, which is from the 80s. But I loved, for example, and I still buy my students, which is now, several years old, but I loved Tina Fey's Bossy Pants. I thought that was an incredibly smart book. There's a comic that I just, who's going to be in the new book, who just did a wonderful thing. We were at the Casa Italiana for NYU. Her name is Maria DeCostas, and she's out there working hard on the stand-up. So I follow a lot of emerging stand-up comics because, if it's tough for me to do this, I have a day job. The people who are really doing this as stand-up comics now is tough. So Maria DeCostas, there's a woman named Leanne Lorde, who is a wonderful comic. She's in this book. I follow her. She's called A Very Funny Lady. She calls herself sort of the urban Irma. I'm always on McSweeney's. I don't know if you know that, Cordelia. It's a website that publishes humor, and they get like the newest and the best, and people who are writing for them. And so that's where that'll be the place where you read a lot of people for the first time that you'll keep reading. And then I go back to sort of my old favorites. I have everything right in front of me, right here. Everything ever written by Dorothy Parker. When I need something to get me started, like I just can't write, I just can't think of something, I go back to Dorothy Parker. I love Dave Barry. The early Dave Barry is really wonderful. Dave Barry learned everything he learned from Robert Benchley, who was writing at the beginning of the last century and actually was sharing a writing room with Dorothy Parker at the New Yorker, where Dorothy Parker said if our desks were any closer together, it would be adultery. So which I think is a great definition of a small office. So Robert Benchley is hilarious. Jean Kerr, who was a woman writing in the 50s and was had at one point the longest running play ever written by a woman, is there. Irma Bombeck is still great. Amy Dickinson, who writes the Ask Amy column, I think is hilarious, actually. I think she's, she's very funny. So, and Zadie Smith is one of who wrote White Teeth. It's a book I teach. It's actually my last two classes in modern British literature. We start with Ford Madox Ford, The Good Soldier, and we end with Zadie Smith's White Teeth. She's not a humor writer per se, but her essays on beauty and on women's lives and the lives of immigrant women and the lives of people of color are hilarious and some of the smartest things that you could ever read. Margaret Atwood always makes me laugh, even as she's writing about the coming apart of the world. You can't go 4 pages in an Atwood book without finding something that's going to make you laugh. What do you read, Cordelia?
I like watching stand-up more than reading books, but I really like Jenny Lawson.
Jenny Lawson, okay, and no, she's terrific. I still really like, and I was wondering what was going to happen with Amy Schumer after she had a kid. I think she's even funnier. I really like Amy Schumer. Amy Schumer does dangerous things, and I like her for that. And and Sarah Silverman's still good. And again, I'm waiting for, I'm waiting for the next one. This Maria DeCostas might be somebody who might be taking them, giving them a run for their money. But thank you. And thank you for asking. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and Gina, as you might expect, Laura Rossi would love you to talk about your upcoming book.
Well, the Fast, Fierce Women is, again, the one for next year. And I think it'll, the best way to think about whether you would be a good contributor for that book would obviously be to read the ones that are in Fast, Funny Women. And because it's about the moments, what I'm always interested in, and what this collection is full of, and what all great writing is about. I'm sure that some of you here are writers, and I talk about writing. I just had a piece recently in the Writer's Digest about how to write flash fiction, flash nonfiction. And I've been teaching writing for 34 years, been doing it a lot. I've had students who have been astonishingly successful, which of course, that's the greatest pride. You feel like there's a legacy, somebody paid attention, they learned something, they're publishing their own stuff, they have their own work out there. And so the idea is to find a moment of the irrevocable in your life. What was the moment? And they're usually, at the time, you don't realize it, but they're the moments that change everything. There's the moment when, the one time when something clicked, something happened, when you said, that's it. When you said either I'm in, or you realized you were out. You realized you were, in fact, you had been done for 3 years. But it was the moment that it occurred to you that you couldn't do it anymore. It was the moment, and when I say fierce, I'm talking about all the interesting kinds of ferocity, not just anger or determination, but the kind of survival instinct that makes us realize why getting up one day after the other matters, and why it's worth it to have a good time doing it. There is a ferocity to survival. That's what I'm looking for in these new stories. The moment where everybody will read it, and the reader's heart, male or female, the reader's heart will beat just that much faster because they'll recognize it. They'll say, okay, yes, there's a distance between what we thought life was going to be and what life turns out to be. And there's a moment when you know that happens. And it's not some big general comment. It's that moment. And that's what you have to capture. And that's actually what humor does. It's why humor, you can't tell a general joke. You can't tell a general story. It's all about the particular. And so finding that and then honing it down into those 750 words that have a beginning, a middle, and an end, not just a character sketch, but that story, the story that you dine off of, as the English would say, the story that you go back to, the story that made you who you are. You got 750 words, 750 words to say, this is the moment where that's what taught me everything I really know. And that's an interesting assignment in life. Even if you decide never to send it out anywhere, let alone the book, it's a really interesting moment to decide and to jot it down for yourself. Leave it someplace that somebody can find it.
Now, I think we have time for another question. If someone is out there who would like to, yes, Nancy DeVita. You'll need to unmute, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi. When you wrote this last book and compiled all this, is there any particular person who just really shocked you with what they wrote?
Yeah, I would say fully 40% of the book shocked me. Oh, I mean, there were really people, because again, they were not what I expected. There was one woman, Maggie Mitchell, who is a novelist and a professor, and she wrote about sex, and she was like, this is out there. It's called Vanilla, and she put it up, and her dad, who I'm also friends with, and her stepmom, and she's like 47, she's not a child. We're like, Maggie, we can't wait to read this part. She's like, oh, this is really, I'm really, okay, well, Dad, it might not be. And it turns out they loved it. This was, so I think that most people actually ended up turning to hers first, just because she was like, I can't believe. I said, no, but people are talking about the worst mistakes that they made, and they make them funny, about the series of worst jobs that they ever had. Nicole Hollander, who did the Sylvia cartoons, who's been a syndicated columnist for years, who's hilarious, wrote about how she is always competing with her sister. I think she's 82 and her sister's 86, and how their whole lives, since they're 5 and 7, or 5 and 8, and that she was so mad at her sister that she told her the entire ending to the season of Ozark that they were watching together. And that she said, you think I'm just watching with you, but I watched the whole thing, and I got to tell you exactly what happened. So that was the worst thing she could do. Joanne Matson, who's a brilliant short story writer from the West, who's won all kinds of literary prizes, actually talks about hating her sister and why she never, and it's funny, but it's really angry about how she never wants and never will talk to her sister again. People wrote, again, really, they took out, it's like in a short, there, a woman named Joan Sidney Siegler, who has MS and who is skiing in Lake Tahoe. She is in an entire body brace. Joni is immobile, except she's in a body brace, and she skis, and she is incredibly active. And she wrote about that there was an emergency. She lives in Connecticut, that there was a hurricane warning, and that her husband left her upstairs, and he was in a panic, and he sort of forgot that she was upstairs. And she's writing about being left upstairs, and then the aide sort of carrying her down, and it's hilarious. And thank God it's hilarious, because otherwise, it would be the most horrifying, tragic Richard Widmark scene you could ever have in a story. But she does it brilliantly, and Joni herself is hilarious. She's a poet. She's funny to interview. She's funny to listen to. So people really, they took the weapons out. Humor is referred to sharp, as sharp for a reason.
That's great. Well, thank you, Gina. This has been absolutely delightful. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Being in the audience. It's been a great.
Thank you very much. Go buy the book.
Yes.
Go buy the book. Ask me to sign it.
Yes.
You decided that
Yeah.
it'd be such a pleasure. Come on to, hi Kathy, come on to Facebook. So I have a public Facebook page. I have real conversations. Just come in and enjoy the stuff, make connections, write to me. I'm easy to find. I answer my emails and I've enjoyed myself enormously. Georgia, you're a goddess. You have to get the next book because Georgia's in it. So we're going to have a good time.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everybody.
See
Good
you
night.
again. See you again. Bye.